the book that I want to review today is The Tiger's Wife by Thea Obreht, and it's a very nice cover actually. I quite like this cover. It's very bright as well. Yeah, this is a magic realist novel, which kind of explains why I was drawn to it. I feel like most of the books that I've reviewed on this channel or have considered reviewing are magic realists, which is not surprising. But yeah, it's definitely on most of those, you know, top 10, or maybe not top 10, but if you type into Google, oh, which magic realism book should I read, this will, without, you know, probably come up. So yeah, a little bit about the author and the book. It was published in 2011 by Thea Obreht, obviously. She was 25 at the age of publication, so she probably wrote it when she was younger. Well, not probably, obviously wrote it when she was younger. I don't know how much younger. It could have been a couple of years younger, years and years younger. But yeah, when she published it in 2011, it won the Orange Prize for Fiction in the same year, and then kind of catapulted her into young writer success and notability, and she was put on the list for best writers under the age of 40, or, you know, like most notable great writers under the age of 40. So yeah, and you know, she deserves that, quite rightfully so, because I mean, if you read this book, or well, if you read reviews about this book, you'll see that there are quite a few mixed reviews, you know, for things like the plot and character development, which I will discuss in this review, but she definitely deserves, you know, recognition for this book, especially as a debut novelist, because it's impressive. I mean, for this to be your first book, that's an impressive feat, and you know, nobody can really argue or deny that she's a great writer. She knows how to use words and tell a story, I think. So The Tiger's Wife tells a story of a young girl, Natalia's grandfather. There are multiple layers to the narrative, and I will try and describe them simply. I have a real habit of kind of digressing myself. So at the novel's opening, we join Natalia, who is a young doctor. She is, at that time of the novel, travelling Eastern Europe with her friend Zora to help children in orphanages, to give them vaccines and, you know, make sure that children are receiving the right kind of medical care. And at this time, she is also dealing with the recent death of her grandfather, which is what the novel then forms around. As there are three strands to the story. The first being that we are joining Natalia and finding out about her grandfather. Second being her grandfather's involvement with the Deathless Man, who is this mysterious kind of character throughout the novel who claims to be immortal and appears throughout her grandfather's life always looking the same, so he is essentially immortal. And he also claims to be Death's nephew, and he's been punished because he saved somebody that was supposed to die, so he was then punished to walk Earth as an immortal, which is a curse in his, you know, Uncle Death, I suppose. Uncle Death's eyes. Sounds like a weird thing to say. And the third strand is much more fable-like. It's still in fitting with the rest of the narrative, but it's definitely kind of set apart and exists within its own little bubble, and that's quite noticeable, I think. The third story is connected to her grandfather as well, and his young childhood in a fictional village called Galena. Now at this time it's the Second World War, and in real life, outside of the novel, there was a bombing in a zoo, the Belgrade Zoo, where a tiger escaped. Now Thea puts this into her novel so that the tiger that escapes the zoo kind of traipses around the mountains and then ends up hovering over this village of Galena where her grandfather lives. And obviously the village kind of respond badly to this. Then there are two characters, and you can probably guess who they're going to be, that like the tiger, and that is the tiger's wife and Natalia's grandfather. So these stories kind of interweave one another and merge together to tell the one story about her grandfather's life. Now whether they do is debatable. I'm not saying that I walked away with a really strong understanding of what her grandfather's life meant, but there is a sense of, you know, growing understanding, I think. The first thing that I want to address about the novel is the language, the word choice. It's very, very good for an author as young as her. Anyway, actually no, I'm not going to use age because that's a silly thing to do. But she really knows how to craft a sentence. She knows how to evoke a sense of place and kind of bring you right in to the novel and understand what is happening, but I think she is very good at placing you. And I know some people don't like overindulgent writing, or not even overindulgent, but they don't like poetical, lyrical kind of writing, but I love it. So I knew I was going to enjoy it as soon as I read the first couple of pages. Now, the relationship between Natalia and her grandfather is obviously at the centre of the book. This is why we are reading what we're reading. I do believe that, and they're kind of mirrors of one another. They're like, you know, 2 points in an axis, and they kind of rotate around the novel in her understanding of him and going back to her memories of him, because obviously she only has a certain chunk of his life in her brain as a child, which is always a difficult thing when you're a child trying to recall a story, because you have a different understanding of situations, and your memory of an adult when you're a child is much different than it would be if you were an adult and you got to know them. Because of this relationship that is built up, it is obvious from early on that Natalia is not really anything more than a conduit for the story. She's there just to be able to tell the story of her grandfather, and more than that, he's then just there, it seems, to tell the story of the deathless man and the tiger's wife. So regardless of how you look at it, there is a lot of time spent building up these characters in the smaller, well, I say smaller, but you know, the smaller narratives. For example, there's a man called Luca who becomes the tiger's wife's husband, and he ends up being a wife beater, and he has a troubling past. So there's quite a lot of time put into his past, which is fine, I think. I do understand why she did it, but I do wonder if it distracts from some of the other characters that could have been given more time, because most people probably would, when they finish the novel, wish they had more of an understanding and connection to the grandfather, and, you know, come away thinking that, you know, they knew him. And I don't know him. I feel I'd love to leave text feeling like I know a character, and I didn't really know them, but I didn't think that didn't have to matter, you know. I wouldn't recommend reading this if you like a very linear narrative, if you like, you know, a fast-paced plot and, you know, a real kind of clarity so that you know exactly why things happened and what it meant. But yeah, I think definitely give it a read if you like magic realism, you like fairy tales, you like fables and myth and kind of surrealism. Definitely give Theo Obreht's The Tiger's Wife a chance. And yeah, I hope this review was okay and not too rushed. I'm trying to get quicker so that I'm not rambling on and on and on.